Hey guys, it's Vanessa V and welcome to my channel. Did I forget? I forgot to cuff my sleeve. Why? Thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to talk about some of the unusual or surprising ways that the pandemic may be affecting us. Because last segment we chatted about how we are feeling, right? And it sort of got me thinking about how the pandemic has really been making us feel. And I did hear from a lot of you about how the pandemic has been making you feel. And so I just thought it would be a great opportunity, since it's been a year. It's been a year, to discuss some of the ways that we've been affected. I have often experienced some of these things and not really known what they were or what was causing them. And if that's you, that may be causing you to have even more stress and anxiety and all of that stuff. And also, I wanted you guys to just know that you're not alone and that there are solutions, there are answers for a lot of the things that we experience. And oftentimes, it's not as scary as we think. And so even knowing that can help lower our stress and anxiety, which is what this channel is all about. So really quickly, if you're not familiar with me, I am an actress and speaker, and I am living with post-traumatic stress disorder. Two things that I'm not is a mental health care professional or healthcare professional. What I am is an expert in my own situation and what works for me. And my hope is that by sharing all of the things that I share on this channel, that they will help you just like they've helped me and so many others. So anyway, without further ado, let's get to them. The first thing I wanted to briefly touch on is the intensity of some of our emotions, perhaps a roller coaster of emotions or a lack thereof, like me. I touched on that last week. And I think for a lot of us, if we are not used to experiencing those things, or we don't understand what it is that we're feeling because perhaps we don't really identify with certain emotions that we've been feeling, it can be really scary. It can be really overwhelming to us. And one of the things that I've found has helped me throughout this whole experience has been what we talk about on this channel, the brain, and how the brain operates mechanically when it's presented with a lot of negative triggers, like the pandemic has brought us. And I think just understanding the fact that if I'm reacting in a way that is scary to me or overwhelming to me or unfamiliar to me emotional wise, there's something mechanical going on, and there are answers and solutions to those feelings that don't necessarily have to be scary or overwhelming. They can be customizable to me. And that's really what this whole channel's about. And that was one reason that I started this channel. So I am going to post some stress hacks below, some more information below about how the brain reacts to stress in case you'd like to learn more about that. Finding comfort in normalcy. Now, I've felt this way throughout my life when I've been homesick and stuff like that. But this feeling that I personally felt, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, was really, really strong. I remember probably in May of last year, there was a sort of a pile of laundry I hadn't gotten to yet, and I needed the clothes to be hung for me to feel better and safer. And so I put them away. And as I put them away, I started to feel much better. And I've never felt that way about laundry. I hate putting clothes away. I mean, I like it once they're put away, but I don't like the act of doing it. And it was so surprising to me how comforting doing that was. Same thing with dishes or just keeping the house a little cleaner or whatever. So I don't know if that's been you, but that definitely surprised me for sure. Catastrophizing. Now, if you're not familiar with this term, it's all good. I wasn't until after I got diagnosed with PTSD. It's something that I used to do all the time. My trauma taught me to operate this way. And it's something that I still have to watch and make sure that I don't buy into as much. So anyway, what is it? Catastrophizing is basically when our brain senses danger and it magnifies that danger to keep us safe. So basically what that is if there's a worry or a problem presented to us or a danger presented to us, catastrophizing is when our brain magnifies it to the worst case scenario. And it seems logical in here and in here to us, so we tend to buy into it more. And the main reason I'm bringing it up is not to suggest that some of the things that we're going through are not worst case scenario. I know for a lot of us, they are. At the same time, I know that catastrophizing can do so much to increase that stress and worry and anxiety and all of that stuff. And so my main message, my main point is just to keep an eye on it and to sort of question our thoughts, question our emotions, and make sure that we are actually accurately perceiving a problem or a worry or a concern or a danger that is in line with actual reality, if that makes sense. This next one, I feel like we've all perhaps done a little bit during this pandemic, and that is reverting back to and or adopting unhealthy coping skills, right? Like eating junk food, definitely me. Zoning out a little bit, definitely me, etc. So whatever that is for you, we've talked about what unhealthy coping skills can be in a previous segment, so I will link that below. In my opinion, what I have found from me personally, especially during this pandemic, is that it's okay, at least for me, when I actively choose to do it a little bit, like eating yummy foods a little bit more than normal, which I did actively decide to do at the beginning of this pandemic, I shared with you. And I've been doing that throughout this entire pandemic, and it has helped to decrease that stress and anxiety. But I think for me to actively choose to do that helped me monitor it more and stay in control of it more. But I know that there's other coping skills that aren't necessarily very healthy that I've also adopted also. Like what I shared with you guys last week, numbing myself a little bit to the rawness of the outside world. That's not something that I thought I had been doing. And when I shared it with you guys last week, it was kind of a surprise. And so that's something that I'm trying to work through because I do want to feel, I want to feel good. And I still want to be present, even though this experience makes us all probably just kind of want to shut down, right? And so basically, I just want you to know that you're not alone and it's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person if you have sort of reverted back. I know for me, it can be really frustrating when you've worked through unhealthy coping skills so much to not rely on them anymore, and then suddenly you realize you've been doing it again. Today is a new day, and there are things that we can do to get us back on track. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. Agoraphobia. So this one is something that I've definitely dealt with previously to the pandemic. It's something that I continue to work through. Basically what agoraphobia is, almost forgot to tell you, is a fear of being in a dangerous situation. That is the most, in a nutshell, definition I can give it. I'm going to link more information below that gives a more detailed definition because I found that when I've looked into this, it's just such a multifaceted thing and it can mean so many different things. But at the end of the day, it's a fear of being in a dangerous situation and not being able to be safe in that situation, not being able to escape. Sometimes when we feel agoraphobic, it can mean fear of leaving our house or our surroundings. But it can mean a lot of different things. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is because I think for a lot of us, we may be experiencing agoraphobia and not understanding what it is. It may seem so much more rational than it may actually be if we don't realize that our brain is trying to keep us safe by trying to keep us feeling protected and closed in. Because I think the pandemic definitely has caused a lot of us to feel a little agoraphobic. And it makes total sense, right? Our brain has been told with logic that staying inside is safer, avoiding people is safer. And so if that tends to feel as though it's getting a little bit out of control, out of your control, or you're experiencing more fear than you thought you would be about doing certain things that perhaps you didn't feel prior to the pandemic, it could in fact be this thing. So I'm going to link more information below for you to look more into. Physical stuff. So I've mentioned this a little bit throughout this past year that I have experienced physical reactions to stress. That's not something that I was familiar with before 10 years ago when I dealt with all that stuff. And it's something that I've come to conquer. But I know that a lot of us are probably experiencing physical reactions to the pandemic, aka stress and worry and anxiety and all of that stuff. And we may not recognize that it is actually caused by stress. Now, really quick before I mention some of those things, by me saying that it's caused by stress or might be caused by stress, that is not me in any way saying that these things are not real, because they are, and they are really destructive and can truly destroy happiness, joy, productivity. And so by bringing these things up, it's not to invalidate how we are feeling or what we are experiencing. It is to highlight a possible cause and therefore solution for the things that we're experiencing, because I know how overwhelming and scary it can be when it feels like nothing's working, or we don't understand why we're experiencing some of the things that we are. So some of those things can be brain fog. I almost said brain frog. Ribbit. Poor memory, difficulty forming cohesive thoughts, IBS, tremors, tinnitus. Oh yes, fatigue, feeling super heavy, aches, pains, back pain, migraines, even changes to our skin, and more. So even though these things may or may not be caused by stress, if you are experiencing them, as always, please feel free to self-advocate and reach out to a professional who can give you perhaps a more clearer picture of what may or may not be going on. And I will link more information below to some of the resources that really helped me back in the early days understand what was going on for me personally, in case it can help you too. Self-image. So this was something that I think the facets of it have surprised me. How we perceive ourselves and who we are may have shifted throughout the pandemic for a myriad of reasons. Obviously, the pandemic has affected our self-esteem for a lot of us, how we identify or express ourselves, how we see ourselves. I know a lot of us have sort of been questioning who we are now. Who are we going to be? Who were we before the pandemic? I think the pandemic has sort of taken away a lot of those things that sort of told us who we were, or helped us discover who we are, or helped us express who we are. Fashion being one of those things, activities, jobs, and our careers. And I think I'm going to bring up something that may be triggering for some of us who have had eating disorders, as I have had. We may have gained or lost weight, and that can definitely have an effect. And I think just overall, many of us have just felt this this feeling of less worth, less value, loneliness, and that can feed into how we feel about ourselves and how we see ourselves. On the other hand, mask wearing has actually helped a lot of us who have social anxiety feel better in public and less stressed in public. So I think that that's pretty interesting. And also there's less societal pressures. So I know for a lot of us, we've actually felt freer and more relaxed and more comfortable in the pandemic, just purely from the lack of social pressure to do stuff and go out and do stuff. So my main message is you're not alone, of course. It's normal. And also at the end of the day, in my opinion, we are not lost. We are just on the journey. This is part of our journey and the world's journey. And so I think the more that we try to get back to who we truly are on the inside, that goodness, and that love, focusing on that, can help guide our way. Inner strength. I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of us are surprised at just how strong we've been able to be, how much we've been able to deal with during this pandemic. If it hasn't hit you yet, let me tell you, you are so much stronger than you were before this pandemic. And the fact that even if we did break down, and even if we did not feel like we had the experience that we would have wanted to have, the strength that we all now have moving forward is undeniable. We are all so much better able to handle uncomfortable situations, challenging situations. And we can rely on ourselves so much more than I think we ever knew we would be able to. And I think that's super surprising, super special, and really great. So yay, our outlook. Now there's a lot of different ways that I think all of us have sort of had a shift in our perspective on a lot of different things. And I know, especially during this pandemic, there has been so many shocking moments, surprising moments, that have challenged how we see our reality, how we see the world, how we see each other, how we see ourselves, our circumstances, etc. In a lot of ways, I feel like the pandemic has caused a lot of us to have to refocus on what's truly important, what our needs are, what our desires are, what we're willing to deal with and not deal with. That's definitely been me. And it's definitely challenged us to ask a lot of questions, not just about ourselves, how we live our lives, what our purpose is, what's important, what isn't important, all of that stuff. But I think it's also really challenged all of us to sort of ask questions that are social questions about each other, how we treat each other, equality, all of those things. And so I think that's been really important. And perhaps at the end of the day, the main shift for many of us in our outlook may in fact be to take better care of ourselves, take better care of the world, and to take better care of each other. Mwah! Increased empathy and understanding for everyone. I know that this sort of ties into what I just talked about, but what I really mean is in a mental health way. I think all of us, whether or not we dealt with mental health concerns prior to the pandemic or not, we all have so much more empathy and understanding for others going through mental health concerns. And I think that's a really awesome thing to have come out of this pandemic, because I think there was such a divide previously to the pandemic. I think right now there's just so much more of an understanding and a clarity and an empathy, increased empathy for dealing with these situations. And so I think that's pretty great. And then really quickly is something that you may have heard floating around a little bit called Coronaphobia. This is something I established this channel in the beginning to help prevent or walk through for us all during this pandemic. If you want to know more information about that, I will link that below. And I know that there's a lot of things that I did not talk about today that we have found to be quite surprising and unique during this pandemic. So feel free to comment below if there's anything that I didn't mention today that you want to give a shout out to in the comments below. That would be great. Also, I guess the last thing I just want to bring up is it's just a question of how has the pandemic affected you, both negatively and positively. And it's not necessarily something you need to comment below about, but I think it's an important question for us all to ask ourselves, because I think it can help us not run from the pandemic so much. It can sort of help us understand the past year and how it has affected us and what we can sort of leave behind, what we can take with us, and appreciate just how strong we've been, even if we felt broken, just how strong and amazing we have been during this experience, and to honor that and take that with us too. So anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in with me today. Thanks for hanging out. Give yourself some love today, you guys. You deserve it. Sending you amazing vibes as always. Mwah. Bye. See you next time.